Before we get started with today's episode, I want to tell you real quick about the 5-day course that I have created for those of you who are interested in macronutrition but have not tried it out yet. So the class is called Starting Macros and it starts January 26th. That is next week. And in this program, we are going through the basics, the foundation that you need to know about macronutrition. We're talking about what macros are, what are the 3 macronutrients, which foods you can find them in. We're also taking a look at food labels so you can see what foods work for your goals and how much to have them. We also start tracking using the MyFitnessPal app, and we are also paying a little bit more attention to protein, or special attention to protein, because this is really the key macronutrient that helps us to get closer to our goals, whether the goals are weight loss, fat loss, athletic performance. We have to get the protein high. So these are the things we're going to talk about in this 5-day class. You're going to get a short video every single day that I will post in our Facebook group. So everything's going to be hosted in the Facebook group, and you can go through it at your own pace. However, of course, I recommend that you go through it as quickly as you can and take action as you can. So everything is super practical. There are some homeworks. You actually are going to do the things yourself. It's not only theory. Here's how it works. We are doing it. We are using the app. We are putting in our foods. We are learning how to track so that you have a better handle of your nutrition. So if you are interested in that, if you've never tried macros but you want to try, now is your chance. Check it out. It's totally free. 5-day program starts January 26th, but the sign up ends on January 25. So make sure that you sign up if this is something that you have been wanting to try. And now let's jump right into our today's episode. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the next episode of the Balanced Vibes podcast. And today we're having a guest episode. It's been a while since I've done one of these, so I am extra excited about that. So our guest today is Denise Wellik-Peterson, and she is a hormone expert who is specializing on menopause and also perimenopause. Is that right?
That's right.
All right. Hi, Denise. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. Thank you very much.
Yeah, I'm really happy to have you on today because I've been getting actually questions about, people who are either approaching menopause or they are in menopause, or even those who are not even close to that yet, but they are thinking, how can I make sure that my menopause is as painless as possible, or as enjoyable as possible? And what I really like about your work is that you show women that menopause does not have to be a struggle. Of course, there's a lot of changes happening, but it doesn't have to be a misery.
Right. Big time.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit more about yourself, who you are, what you do, and also why are you so excited about menopause?
I've been a personal trainer for just about 20 years now. It was a career jump at 30, just about 30. I've got twin daughters who hit puberty about the time my hormones started going crazy. So that's what got me interested or even put menopause on my radar, right? Because at 36, like when you say younger people are asking you questions, really by 36, it wasn't even top of my consciousness kind of thing, until like just huge mood swings, whatever. But I'm a big believer that we were not put here to suffer, right? That whatever your higher power is, my higher power did not put me in here on this earth to suffer 1 week out of every single month, and did not think that at 50 life should be over or I die, right? I mean, I think that we are put here to be happy, to be comfortable, to feel good in our skin. And I set out to go, okay, what's that going to take? What's that going to take? Because I wasn't, as a young person, my periods were awful. Awful.
And can you tell us a little bit more about that? What did they look like?
4 Advil every 3 hours or passing out. Just awful cramps, awful PMS, missing school, missing work. Just complete, just awfulness, and then I volunteered in the hospital, and one of the volunteer coordinators, I remember her saying, it'll be all better after you have your first kid. Like, that's what you want to tell a 16-year-old, right? But when I had my first kids, guess what? it didn't get any better. It was still just as awful. I'm like, the only thing that makes me pretend it's not as awful is that childbirth was worse than my cramps, but only that much.
Mm-hmm.
So I just really set out to go, okay, I started hearing, cramps and PMS are common but not normal, common but not normal, common but not normal.
Mm-hmm.
What does that even mean? It happens to everybody, right? And I was one of those that I remember watching movies and, they'd flip through their calendar and go, oh my gosh, I missed my period. I'm like, how do you not know you missed your period? I don't understand. I have such a big awareness of when my period is. I think you're full of baloney. And so in my early 30s, I went through some pretty big work with a naturopath. And the first time I had my period and it was a surprise, it was like, holy cow, this is so cool.
Right. So that was like a normal period with no PMS and no cramping.
No cramping. Like, it was like, what is this? Wait, holy smokes, I'm doing the movie thing. I'm counting the weeks, It was like, wow. And it's been that way ever since. So,
wow. So what were the changes that helped you to get to this point?
I kind of decided as I looked back over my life that I probably had some, 40 years ago, we weren't diagnosing gluten allergies and dairy allergies and whatever. And bread and milk were a daily part of my life. Mm-hmm. And we did some detoxing of kind of everything. We did some hormonal support. And by hormonal support, I mean straight up nutrition, changed up. I did do a medical grade protein powder for a month or two, but just really cleaning up my diet, taking the things out that we learned that I was not reacting well with. Mm-hmm. Now I can do dairy in little degrees, like once a month I can have a cheesecake kind of thing, but
okay,
not creaming my coffee every day.
So diet was the big game changer for you.
Huge.
Mm-hmm. Huge. Okay. So how would you say like our hormonal health in our fertile years impacts our hormonal health when we are approaching menopause or in menopause? Does it affect it?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Okay, tell us about it.
Just like, planting a tree, the best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago. The next best time is now. Mm-hmm. I firmly believe that in muscle gains, in hormones, right? I mean, if we go through this phase, it took me till 30 to have a pain-free period because my foundation stunk so bad, right? I had to go through a lot of work to clean that up and make that happen. Where if it had been diagnosed earlier or recognized earlier, right? The earlier you set that foundation down and the stronger you set those habits, right? There's some pretty clear things that I do now that I totally could have been doing at 13 or 14. I could have been going for a walk. I could have been practicing meditation. I could have been making sure I was getting protein at every meal, but I didn't know those things. Mm-hmm. And had I learned those habits back at 13, 14, 17, 21, now it wouldn't be a big deal at all, right? Now I'm talking to women in their late 40s and going, so protein. Mm-hmm. And, there's some blank stares or I don't understand how protein works into breakfast. Mm-hmm. The earlier you start it, the easier the flip is going to be, the less you're going to have to overcome, right? You're not going to have to backpedal to clean up the system.
Right. But it's still never too late, right? It's not that, I missed the train and there's nothing to do about it. My hormones are crap. Now it is what it is.
The only train missing happens in your head. As soon as you start to say, I'm too old, I can never change this, it's never too late to change it. It's never too late to say, you know what? I'm going to have protein before my coffee today. I'm going to go for a walk today. If you wait till 50, it's going to take maybe a little bit longer than if you start at 30. Mm-hmm. But you've already suffered for 50 years. Do you really want to suffer for another 20, 30, 50? Mm-hmm. You might have 50 years. At age 50, you might still have 50 years for crying out loud.
Yes.
They don't have to suck.
Yes, so true. Yeah, you know that I have worked with a lot of women who have lost their periods, right? So because they have been so overtrained and a lot of times also under eating, and then they also think sometimes that there's nothing to do about that anymore. And I'm telling them, no, you just do the reverse. If you've been starving yourself and overtraining, now you're just gonna do the opposite thing and rest more and feed yourself. But have you seen anything like this, like women who haven't had their period for like 5+ years? Does that affect our health later too, other than possible osteopenia, osteoporosis?
Going to be honest, I haven't worked with a lot of women that have lost their period early in their life, so I don't know if I'm totally qualified to talk on that one.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
But I'm a firm believer in it's never too late.
Right. It really is never too late. Yeah. So did you ever, being a personal trainer, did you ever have this time when you were overtraining or training completely wrong, looking back and thinking, what the heck did I do?
Yeah. Back when I was 30, I competed in a bodybuilding competition. Mm-hmm. And 20 years ago, first of all, I don't know that the training is that great now still, but it's definitely longer. I took a very intense time, and it was just before I became a trainer, and I wasn't like adding up the calories. And I look back at my journals now and go, I was literally eating 800 calories a day, doing twice a days, lifting super heavy, running super fast. Who thought that was a good idea? That would be the one time. And then, of course, the rebound on that is just as severe.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. What kind of signs, symptoms did you see as a result of this?
Uncontrollable cravings, binging. Like there would be that late night. I mean, I had a really, really physical job at the time too. And that was like, I know this is all I'm supposed to eat today, but food was set down, somebody brought cookies in or whatever. Like a vacuum, right? It's like looking back, I can go, because you were doing twice a day and lifting heavy on 800 calories a day. Is it any surprise that food got set in front of you and you inhaled it?
Nope, no. Not surprised at all.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Those would be the biggest things, just food, food hang-ups, food stuff like that.
Mm-hmm. Sure. So how can we prepare for a healthy menopause?
First and foremost, start lifting weights today.
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 I don't care if you're 16 or 26 or 56, start lifting weights today. It will never be easier to lift to gain muscle than it is whatever today is. And that's even if you're 56. If you wait another 10 years, it's going to be even harder. And, not 10 pounders. Start lifting the big girl weights, put muscle on. Muscle drives your metabolism and will continue to drive your metabolism. Muscle sets you up for strong bones. And it really helps with your insulin sensitivity, which ends up being a really big deal the older you get between insulin and your stress reactivity. Whatever you can do to counter that now, and then get some kind of stress reduction practice in place. When I've got 3 pillars to my program, right? Exercise, nutrition, and stress reduction. And I usually attack it, so to speak, with my clients in that order. But I'd really like to start with stress reduction, but nobody likes to be told, okay, I want you to do nothing, right? People like to do things. Stress reduction is that big a deal, whether it's strolling, painting, meditation, whatever it is, stress reduction. But start it now. The earlier you start, the better. But again, it's not all lost if you're still 55, 45, 35.
Yeah. So you mentioned gaining muscle and then the ability to handle stress, right? That's what you mentioned. Can you speak a little bit more to that?
As we get older, the ability of the body to deal with the stress hormones that are released becomes poop, right? I mean, first of all, we're dealing with a super old system, and 10,000 years ago, when the tiger was chasing you, you literally had to run for your life. The cortisol was released, and you literally used it, the adrenaline, the cortisol released, you had to use that to run for your life, and nothing else mattered, because if you didn't survive this tiger's lunch, you were toast, right? But you literally ran off that cortisol. Now, our cortisol and our adrenaline get hyped up with bad traffic, with an argument with our spouse, whatever it is that trips your trigger. You probably don't run for your life. You probably stand there and just feel it flood through your body, and then you don't burn it off. Well, then it stews the stuff in your body, and it's like, okay, there's still all this cortisol. We don't have time to digest the food that you're eating, that donut that you grabbed afterwards. We can't digest that because obviously your life is in danger. You're still running from the tiger. So then that's stored as fat, right? So whatever we can do to use those stress hormones, right? And the more muscle we have, the more that sort of thing gets utilized quicker, right? Then you go run up and down a few flights of stairs and you're going to burn that cortisol off quicker, and you can get back into digesting your food instead of storing it.
Yeah. Yeah. There's such a big connection between, stress and then gut issues, right? So when we are eating, like you said, you just had an argument with your spouse or something, somebody cut you off in traffic, and then you're like eating in your car. Even if you eat the most nutritious thing, you can have your kale salad with salmon, but you're not getting the benefits of it if your stress hormones are through the roof while you're doing it, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. Let's talk a little bit more about exercise. So I know that you are a big fan of heavy lifting, and I am too. But how does it change in menopause? Would you say, for example, the ratio of like high intensity training and weight training and cardio training, does that change? Are we able to do our bodies respond better to one form of exercise compared to the other one in menopause? How does it work?
So it's going to go back to stress, right? And even exercise, it causes physical stress in the body, right? And so what studies find is that in intense exercise, so lifting really heavy, not putzing around with 5-pound weights, unless that's super heavy for you, right? Excuse me, is that testosterone and growth hormone are released when you lift really heavy weights, or when you sprint really, really fast, right? Those are released. And we want the benefit of the testosterone and the growth hormone. That helps with your skin. It helps with it. It's just good, right? But at the same time, cortisol is also being released. You're stressing out your body by lifting really heavy weights or running really fast. But the testosterone and the growth hormone are going at a much faster pace for about that first half hour. At about that half hour mark, cortisol catches up and then bypasses the testosterone and growth hormone. So once you hit about that 30-minute mark, now all of the benefits, and not instantly, right? But cortisol starts overtaking the growth hormone and testosterone. So now you're not getting any further benefit, and you're causing into detriment. Now things are hitting the wall, and you're not going to get as much benefit out of it. I'm all about, let's get the most bang for your buck. In and out in 30 minutes. Done. And yes, your warm up counts. The only thing that doesn't count is the stretching afterwards, right? A lot of women try and the women that come to me that are exercisers are like, 30 minutes. That doesn't count my warm up, does it? Yes, that's stressing your body out. If you jog for a while before you take off sprinting, stressing your body out. 30 minutes. So I'm a big believer. You set the timer, you get out of your car, you've got 30 minutes to get back in because there's a bomb underneath your seat. Your car's going to blow up if you're not sitting in your seat in 30 minutes. So first of all, 30 minutes. Be done, because then your testosterone and growth hormone are getting the most bang for your buck. Also, hard. Like it should be hard. We're not going for, if you're doing cardio, you're not doing steady state, because all that's doing, if you just decide, okay, I'm going to steady state walk. I'm going to walk for an hour, 4 miles an hour, arms pumping, breathing heavy. Unfortunately, at that pace, testosterone and growth hormone aren't released, right? Cortisol is released. That's it. Cortisol. So now you're doing all this work. You're not getting the benefit of a testosterone or growth hormone spurt, and all you're getting is cortisol, and then you go home and eat because you're hungry, because you just burned all those calories. But what's going to happen? You got all that cortisol floating around in your system. You're going to store it.
So the last example is more like, like a steady state running or something like that. But it's different with just like a leisurely walking, right? That's another thing.
Yes, that's a
Right?
different thing.
Okay, tell us more about that too, because this should be highly super beneficial, right, to all of us.
Yes, yes. Strolling. So I go into it, it's strolling. The definition of a stroll is if you're on a treadmill, 2.8 to 3.2 miles per hour, no incline, no arms pumping, no huffing and puffing. Strolling, like get a book if you're on a treadmill. If you're out walking in the neighborhood, it's like walking with the 2-year-old, and they got to bend down and they got to look at the worm and they got to pick the flower and you're doing everything but getting down the block, right? It's walking with your spouse going, oh, look at their Christmas lights. Oh, look, they planted some new flowers. Oh, this house is for sale, and like stopping and looking, right? It's not for the sake of calorie burning. It's for the sake of, you had a fight with your boss earlier today and we just got to use some of that cortisol. Just get your steps in. It's not about a step goal. It's not about burning calories. It's just move more than sitting in front of the TV. Burn a little bit of cortisol. Enjoy your honey. Enjoy the weather. Maybe get some vitamin D if you're outside, right? All of these other beneficial things that we need in hormone balancing.
So putting it all together, what you would recommend, pretty intense strength training, about 30 minutes a day, and then some walking.
Twice a week.
Twice a week. Okay.
So with my clients, I usually have them do 4 total workouts a week. And I usually balance it at 2 strength and 2 cardio, which is not the strolling, but like an intense cardio workout, it could be running. That's the easiest example to wrap your head around, right? It's like, I go to the local soccer field, I sprint from goalpost to goalpost. Maybe it takes me 30 seconds. And then I walk back. It takes me about 2.5 minutes to walk that same distance back so that I can breathe again, and then sprint at that same pace back. So all in, I maybe sprint 5 minutes out of 30, but it's that. But it could also be a super fast, like a kettlebell swing workout, or just something that really makes you have to breathe hard to the point of you have to stop, kind of thing. So all in, I tell my clients 4 a week, and with at least 2 of them being strength, but if they wanted to have a third one be strength, they could. But heart health, right? Heart strength, we need cardio too.
And the rest of it is just leisurely walking, like just strolling as much as you want.
Yep. And then, in my happy world, I'm like 60 minutes a day, 7 days a week. But that messes with people's heads too. Then they're like, well, I can't do anything. I can't do a whole hour. So they don't do it at all. I'm like, if it's 10 minutes every other day, cool. So,
yeah. It also depends on the person and what their starting point is, right?
Yep. Do what you can do with where you're at right now. Because if you don't start sometime, it's never going to get improved.
Right. So what about diet then? Are there specific things that we have to keep in mind when we are approaching menopause, in menopause? How should we change our diet?
As our hormones start to do weird things, we become more stress reactive and more insulin sensitive, to the point where we very easily release too much insulin resistant. I'm sorry, not insulin sensitive, insulin resistant. And we really need to start backing away. If you're a donut eater, if you eat tons of carbs, if you're a pasta every night person, like start bringing it back to, like, what's a real serving of pasta? It's not 4 cups on your plate. It's like a half a cup, right? As our hormones get more disrupted, really bringing the carbs down a lot, the starchy carbs, not vegetables. Vegetables are a huge thing. We need the fiber, but the breads, the pastries, the sugars, those kind of carbs, even the healthy ones. Potatoes are great, but like half of a small potato at night, not a huge baked potato, right? So that's the biggest thing. Also, fiber from your vegetables, because as our hormones get out of whack, extra estrogen sits around in your system. Excess estrogen sitting around in your system causes mood swings, causes night sweats, causes hot flashes. So we want to make sure that the extra estrogen, as it is released, gets out of the body as quickly as possible. We do that with fiber.
Mhm.
And then finally, or initially, whichever one works better for you, protein. Protein, 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 protein. Protein, protein at every meal, protein first bite of the day, protein before your coffee, protein. Up and down of 100 grams a day, or 1 gram per pound of lean body mass with 100-gram minimum, right? Postmenopausal, it goes up to 125 grams minimum, because as we move through menopause, we become less able to process the protein, but we still need to get that 100 grams or more into the system. That's why we bump up to 125 grams, so that the body can still use around 100 grams.
Yeah.
And that was found, Dr. Stacy Sims' book, Roar. She did a lot of studies on elite athletes, and in those studies found that pound for pound of lean mass, postmenopausal women who no longer get their period, need more protein than an 18-year-old man. Pound for pound lean mass, right? So in my 20 years as a trainer, sitting in front of women my age at the gym, and they're like, I don't understand why I can't lose weight. You know, you do look at their food, and you're like, you're getting 50 grams of protein. This is not acceptable. And, you know, they cut protein because there's too much fat in it. There's too many calories in it. I'm just not that hungry. I'm like, then cut something else out. Cut something else out. That's why protein is the first thing you eat off your plate every single meal in my world. Right. And then when they start increasing their protein, they're amazed. All of a sudden they can sleep. They start losing weight. Their energy increases. I've done challenges on protein. Literally, if they increase even just 5 to 10 grams over the course of a week, they start noticing these things: sleep, energy, and weight loss in a week because of the protein.
Would you say that 125 grams recommendation that you had, this is regardless of their weight? Anybody should be getting this amount?
This is regardless of their lean body mass. I mean, if you've got 200 pounds of lean mass, then the answer is 200. Okay. But, you know, if you're looking at a 125 pound woman, 40-year-old woman, and I'm like, well, your answer is 100 grams minimum. Right. Okay. So it's whichever is more.
Right. Okay. Yeah.
Math, 100 grams.
And this is so important to start practicing already right now, you know, when you are in your 20s or in your 30s. It's also, I mean, of course, it's really healthy, but it's also forming a habit, because every habit takes so much time. It's a myth that you learn a new habit in 28 days. No, you don't. You need a lot.
Learn it, but then you got to still reminding yourself. Yeah.
Yeah. And then after you've done it, you know, several months and years, then it becomes a habit and a practice that you do. And I think it's always helpful to think about it this way, like, okay, I'm doing this for my health. It really, truly helps me to feel stronger and, you know, healthier. And like you said, sleep better and have better mood and all that kind of stuff. So don't be afraid of protein.
Yeah, I think that one too is, it's the hardest for people to wrap their heads around protein at breakfast. You know, if they're not a protein shake drinker or they don't like eggs, then it's almost like their imagination. You need to really talk them through what has protein in it. That, you know, it's that whole breakfast food idea. I have cereal for breakfast.
Yeah.
Cool. How about a steak? Steak and eggs would be good.
Yeah. It's just like, we have to think outside of the box a little bit. Like the typical breakfast food is cool, but why can't you just heat up some steak from last night? Why can't this be your breakfast? And I get
a lot of mindset.
Yeah. And I get it. We're not used to it, but also just saying always like, oh, I can't, this is too hard, or I'm not used to it. This is keeping you stuck. You got to change something. Right?
Agreed.
Yeah. Okay, cool. So what are some of the most common things that women need your help with?
Weight loss, sleep, and libido are the biggest things people come to me with, wild mood swings coming in there after that. And then another big thing, people come to me having just been to their doctor and maybe they have like super duper heavy periods, or they're being told, you know, a hysterectomy is your next step. Those women come to me pretty frequently as well. And we work through the protocols, and all of a sudden we can get their periods down to a week or less. We can get them closer to a 28-day cycle, where instead of bleeding for 3 weeks, they're bleeding for 5 days. Their life is so much more improved with that. But
is it mostly the diet that helps to regulate the periods in your patients or clients?
It depends. I've had a couple of them that are very strong exercisers that we really had to address their exercise habits. And it's great that you've got great exercise habits, but now is the time you need to back off. We get to be more efficient with our workouts. But nutrition is definitely a big dial mover. Protein is a huge dial mover.
Yeah, I've seen the same thing with my clients too. Some of them, they have either like really, really heavy periods, or they last longer than a week, or they show up every 55 days. And then honestly, we start adjusting the macronutrients a little bit and get the protein higher. And that has just changed things so many times. And I was blown away at first. I was like, wow. And such a simple thing, not always easy thing to do, but a relatively simple thing versus, taking some kind of medication that doesn't do anything to the underlying issue. And yeah, things are changing. It really, diet and high protein can really, really help. Let's talk about libido too. That's an interesting topic. So a lot of women already in their 20s, 30s, who are either really overtrained or their nutrition isn't really on point, they experience that. And I think this is not an okay time. In your 20s, 30s, 40s, you should be enjoying having sex. So what's up with that?
Again, what are we fueling with, right? And we're messing with our hormones. And so often, especially in the medical reality, right? We want to go, oh, your adrenals are burnt out, so we need to give you something for your adrenals. But what about the cascade effect, right? It's a 7-point system, the endocrine system, and you can't remove your thyroid and think that your ovaries aren't affected. You can't burn out the adrenals and think that your ovaries are. You can't take out your ovaries and think that your thyroid's not affected, right? It's a trickle down thing. You've got to heal all of the things. So yeah, it's about your ovaries. But if you come to me and then you tell me you had your thyroid out, I'm like, well, guess what your ovaries are going to try and do? They're going to try and kick out some thyroid hormone, because it's one big system. So we got to play with it all. But how do you keep the whole hormonal system in check? Protein. Could be that grass-fed, non-hormonal stuff, but right, you got to have some protein. Quit pumping in four things of soda a day, so that your sugar, your sugar increases. What's going to follow it? Your insulin. It's a hormone. You're not just affecting insulin. How many hormones are there? There's not just 3. There's not just 7. There's 50, 60. There's a huge amount of hormones, right? And you're playing with all of them. But we address one. So you want your libido to come back, quit eating all the sugar. Eat more protein. Work out a little bit.
Yeah, so true. It's so funny how it almost always comes back to the same principles, right? The same things. And yet we're trying to find this like one solution that's something that we don't know yet, but it's not. It's always like, it's the same, like the diet and the lifestyle, and keeping things in moderation too, not overdoing things. That can be other thing that totally can wreck your hormones and kill your libido too. And that's really sad.
Very. I mean, something that, so I have also worked for years with the 65 plus crowd. And interesting, it's, at first it was very uncomfortable for me to talk about libido with them, right? I was a 30 something trying to figure out this whole libido thing, right? And they seriously would sit there and go, we don't understand what you're talking about. We never had that problem, right? Or hot flashes maybe were not a thing, or some of the common menopausal things just were not a thing. And so you start looking at that and go, now what has changed since when they went through menopause and I'm going through menopause? How is as a society, how has our diet changed? Is it got to do with the chemicals that are in our system? Or how about just the amount of sugar that we eat as a society, right? Like I think back to reading, Laura Ingalls Wilder books, and they would talk about the maple syrup thing, right? And that was their sugar rush for the year,
Mm-hmm.
right? And look at how much sugar we eat by accident by using ketchup,
Yeah.
right? These barbecue sauce, whatever, we get so much more sugar. Well, do we think then that that's not playing a role? If you go back and ask your grandma or your great grandma, what were your menopause symptoms? And they don't even know what you're talking about.
Mm-hmm.
Go to China, they don't even have a word for menopause.
Really? Is that true?
What are you doing? Yeah.
That's awesome.
So you can't tell me that it doesn't have to do with how the world has changed as well and what we think of as normal.
Sure. And of course,
so why not?
There's also more environmental toxins and just general life stress. Just recently, I heard about a study in men in Great Britain, and it was what was the percentage? Was it 60-70% of like a 30-year-old men have erectile dysfunction? And I was like, wow, look at that. This is crazy. These men are really young. About like 3 men out of 4 had this issue. It can't be random. There's probably, like you said, I think dietary stuff, maybe also over consuming alcohol. I don't know, but I'm just guessing. Because that's also something we do to reduce stress in air quotes, right? And then it actually just piles up and there's more stress later.
Exactly.
Yeah. Modern world is awesome, but it also, comes with a lot of stuff that is not so good. And it's actually our job to handle this because we have to take the responsibility, right? Like working with people like you, if we don't know what to do, just turn to those people who know, because you're not supposed to suffer, and menopause or any other stage of your life shouldn't suck that way.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah. Can you tell us a little bit more about early menopause? Why does this happen and how common it is?
I don't know the facts on how common it is. Why does it happen? Because we burn through our endocrine system. It's supposed to last 100 years and we burn through it by 30, 35, right? All of the overtraining things, all of the extreme things we do, all of the pendulum swinging we do, it's going to burn through the system. Well, then what? Right? Better to slow that pendulum and get a smaller swing going on earlier. I would have to say it's probably going to be doing with extremes, but I don't deal a whole lot with the early menopause outside to say, okay, let's talk nutrition, let's talk strength, let's go on a stroll while we do these things. It just keeps coming back to, let's get back to the basics. If you're going to throw pills at it, then it's going to mess up what I think should be happening if you do the things. So I'm not against pills. I'm just saying it's going to change my idea of what's happening if you're working with me, kind of thing.
Yeah, that's interesting. You said like burning yourself out. That might be one of the issues you're thinking, right? Actually makes a lot of sense, because your body is like, okay, I'm done. I'm pretty much used up all my things, and I don't have
the backups gone.
Right. That makes a lot of sense. And that's why, when women sometimes tell me that, oh, I don't have to deal with my stuff right now. Like, I don't have to deal with getting my period back right now. I'll do it later sometime. I'm like, yeah, you're wasting your years, and you are not setting yourself up for a very healthy, 50s and 60s and 70s and beyond. Yeah.
It only gets harder.
Yeah. So you have this really cool concept of like four different types of women that we are as we go through our menstrual cycle. Can you tell us a bit more about that?
So our hormones change over a 28-day cycle, right? And biologically, hormonally, we are a different person showing up every single week. And it's not just with libido, it's with your sleep, it's with what your brain more easily works on each week of the month, right? You could break it down into 2 distinct phases, right? Before ovulation and after ovulation. But to show the continuum, I kind of like 4 weeks, 4 different gals, right? So you show up, week 1 is when your period starts. right? And at that point, you're starting with all three of your major sex hormones, estrogen, progesterone, and testosterone, are all at their lowest point of the month. I mean, in the ideal, happy, healthy hormonal system, right? They're all at their lowest. This is your lowest energy. Your digestion sucks. This would be your strongest point of PMS, right? And as your estrogen then starts to increase, your energy increases. In your brain, you are really good with numbers. You're really good with analyzing how was last month, right? Like that would be the day that you look at how did the budget work last month? Did you reach your goals last month? What are we going to project going forward this month, right? Your brain is in a different place than it's going to be 2 weeks down the line, right? Further into your period, it's your brain shifts into creative mode. Okay, let's paint. Let's do paint night. It's a great time to work outside the box if you have, like a corporate job, right? So it's not just painting or whatever, it's corporate job. Week number 2, how can I think this problem outside of the box? How else can we approach this? This is when you're going to be your most creative, right? Also, when you are going to be at your friskiest, right? Because testosterone skyrockets, because it all comes back to our 10,000-year-old system. Survival of the species says when we ovulate, we need to be frisky, right? If you're not frisky, you're not going to ovulate, which means the species will die, right? Everything comes back to survival of the species, right? And that's the time to get it. When you switch over to progesterone mode, we become far less energetic. But this is because, right, survival of the species. If you've become impregnated, we need you to lay low so that fertilized egg takes hold. Survival of the species, right? Lay back. You want to plan a date that week? Okay, cool. It may or may not end up in frisky time. It may take a lot more foreplay. It may take a lot more warm-up time, but you might get into it. But by the end of week 4, it's like the brain goes into wrap this project up. It's very much a nesting mode, just like the end of pregnancy, right? Wrap this up. Give me the list. We've got to get these things done before we move on to the next cycle. Frisky wise, maybe not. It wouldn't be the time that I'd say, hey, let's book a hotel reservation that 4th week. And then, your diet and nutrition needs change too. So I don't know how much you want me to go into all of these women, but the way you feed yourself throughout the month really changes pretty dramatically.
Well, why don't you tell us a couple of biggest things that we should know about diet throughout our cycle?
So in the first half of your month, weeks 1 and 2, your estrogen is the dominant hormone going on. Estrogen likes to burn carbs. So if you are looking to lose weight during that half of your cycle, I'd say, okay, let's do some carb cycling. Just for 2 weeks, let's do some carb cycling. Really, couple really high days, couple really low days, couple in between days, right? But second half of your cycle, when the progesterone kicks over, progesterone's fuel source of choice is fat. And your body will automatically burn about an extra 300 to 500 calories a day. So if you are looking to lose weight, I'd say, okay, set the carb cycling aside. The body isn't really interested in carbs so much this half. Pick one day each of those 2 weeks, so a total of 2 days a month, not back to back, and do a fast, a modified fast. I'm not for this, don't eat anything a day. A high protein, easily digestible, 700-ish calories one day. And the reason for that is just to kick your body over into, let's burn some of the stored fat. But you prime that with the day before you eat extra protein at bedtime so that you've got protein in your system so your body doesn't stress out. You eat maybe some like protein shakes, bone broth, really super easily digestible things. Don't go in the full starvation mode. And then the day after the fast, you immediately eat some protein first thing right away. Okay? But that lets your body have a day of, okay, I'm going to have to use some of this stored energy now.
Wow.
So that would be
I've never thought about, or never knew about that. And throwing that little faster, that is interesting. What I've found actually with my clients is that like the week before the period, some of them have really intense cravings for carbs in particular.
Because their body wants 300 to 500 extra calories to support that impregnation that may or may not be there.
Okay.
Lean into it. Lean into it.
Right. And then they should do it.
Yeah.
That's what they need.
But not with sugary carbs.
Yes.
Right? Start with the protein, or super dark chocolate, a square of really dark chocolate, 85, 90%.
Yeah. Chocolate's good. Get all the good stuff.
Exactly. You get the extra calories. Your body wants the extra calories. The body will burn the extra calories those 2 weeks.
Yeah. Plus the extra magnesium that you need during that time anyways. And dark chocolate, almond. I'm like, this is such a good time to have all that. I mean, have your kale too, but.
Exactly. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. Very cool.
Lean into what the cycle wants and you're going to get better results, right? If you lean into the body wants a little bit more fat, the body wants a little bit more carbs, well, then do it. Just know it's not a 4-week thing. It's this 2 weeks or that 2 weeks. Which 2 weeks are you in? So you are doing the thing that then that's going to help you lose weight. If I'm going to eat, if I'm going to carb cycle in week 4, this is not going to work so well because your body's like, I don't want all these carbs. This stuff needs to be stored. Lean into where the body's at.
Yeah, so true. All right. So tell us, where can we find you on social media?
I'm on Facebook and Instagram. If you want to go more in depth on this stuff, I talk more about it in the Menopause Project. It's a private Facebook group. Just join the Facebook group. We go into a little bit more detail. I do monthly education bits in there, or you can find me on Instagram. I'm not quite as detailed, but you'll learn a lot of stuff there too.
Okay, sounds good. Well, thank you so much, Denise, for coming on today. I appreciate your knowledge and your time, and talk to you again.
Thanks for having me. Have a good one.
Thank you. Bye.